warm welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. Yeah, today I'm alone here in the studio. Unfortunately, Ben has no time available, and I got the better chair. This one is smoother, weaker, and I got the footrest. Very good. So, best conditions to have this presentation alone. And today we're tasting 4 very special blended malt whiskies, because these whiskies are our own whiskies. I decided some years ago, 5 years ago probably, to have my own whiskey. So after 25 years in the business, I thought we should have, or I should have a whiskey made by myself. And I came to that, I came to that thought because there had been a painter or a sketchist, characterist from a newspaper, and he sat at home with one of our whiskies and made a drawing, and you find this drawing here on the camera. And I'm standing here beside my cask and have a glass of whiskey, and there's an angel flying above. So that's the angel's share, and in the back there is a malt whiskey distillery in Scotland. So I decided, this should be a very good label for my own whiskey. And there had been some characteristics what to do for such a whiskey. And the first is, this whiskey should represent a very typical premium whiskey from Scotland. And this whiskey should have no nearest or combination with a special name of a distillery. So we should have an independent label not showing the distillery. And I would like to have my personal whiskey, so I decided to mix the whiskey, to blend the whiskey myself. But I didn't want to have a blended whiskey with all that grain whiskey made from wheat or maize in it. So I decided to have a blended malt whiskey from Scotland in this bottle. And I decided to have a Scotch whiskey because this whiskey makes up 90% of all premium whiskies in the world. And so I thought we should take a Scotch whiskey for this. And there are different whiskey producers in the world. We will see that in the near future. In a few minutes when I show the maps of the world where those whiskey come from. But we decided to have our own range of whiskies now, all blended malt whiskies, which we mix to our personal preferences. So you have the single malt whiskies available in the world, and those are selective whiskies. You select the whiskey from a particular distillery, then you write the name on the whiskey, and this is the whiskey from Glenfiddich, from Glengrant, from whatever, Lagavulin, and so on. And then there, on the other hand, you have the blended whiskies like Johnny Walker, J&B Rare, and they are mixed whiskies. They are artificially mixed. It's not a character from a single distillery, but the character a whiskey maker or a team of whiskey makers decide this should be the taste of the whiskey. So it is an artisanal task to produce that whiskey. And I decided, I will have my own, and I will decide how this whiskey should taste. And so we mixed up, but I said I do not like this grain whiskey, the whiskey from wheat or maize. So I will have a blended malt whiskey. Means malt whiskies from different distilleries, no added grain. And there are a lot of different whiskey acts and in the world, and starting with the Scotch whiskey regulations from 2009, there had been an old version which was then replaced by this one. And there are laws and there are regulations, which together give the legal framework for a whiskey. And this means for the malt whiskey, it should be produced only by malt, which is fermented, germinated barley, and has to mature at least, has to be distilled up to a certain strength, has to be matured in cask for a certain time, at least 3 years. And all this stands in those regulations, pages of legalese. So yeah, but this is what it is. Then we have the Irish whiskey. They have their own Whiskey Act, which has to, go together with the European Community, the EC, because Ireland is part of the European Union, and this has to go together so that they do not disturb each other. Very complicated. And here the Irish whiskey technical file is from the Ministry of Agriculture. Then we have the American bourbon, and here American red tape work, legalese at its best. It's part of the regulation of the alcohol, tobacco and firearms. So this is together in one big regulation, and Ben said I should have the full path to this regulation. It's the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations, Title 27, Chapter 1, Subchapter A, Part 5, Subpart C, Paragraph 5.22. So these regulations are part of preserving the own whiskey against others, to build fences, to distinguish the own product from others. So this is what it is. And in the US, there had been this Bourbon Act, changed over the years a lot. And then there had been Jack Daniels in Tennessee, and they said, well, we are one of those distilleries in the US, but let's make an own code, the Tennessee Whiskey Act. And this is built on the Bourbon Act. Most of that is the same and a little bit different, but now Jack Daniels is able to be the biggest one in the Tennessee part of the whiskey. So yeah, that should be. And now we come to the map of the countries which produce premium whiskey. There are a lot of countries in the meantime which produce whiskies as well. The history comes from the United Kingdom and the Old English Empire, where the sun never sets, from New Zealand over Australia, India, Europe up to the Americas. Everything was reigned by Queen Victoria, and the soldiers which suppressed the indigenous people in those countries were Scottish, and they would like to have their Scotch whisky in those countries where they stayed for years. And from time to time there were ships coming from the islands and brought some whiskey which was faster emptied than it should be. And in England there were the people counting money, so they didn't were at the front of the colonialism. And so the Scotch people decided we have to build our whiskey distilleries everywhere we are. So there are whiskey distilleries a lot in India, a lot in the US, in Canada as well, New Zealand, Australia, not too many. And here you see some distilleries which we have in our database, where you can look all those up with pictures and videos and bottles and tasting notes and a bunch of things. And of course, there's in Central Europe, in Germany, there's a lot of them because our company resides in Germany. And in Japan, there's a lot. That happened that there had been a guy traveling to Scotland in 1923. There he found his wife married, and they went back and founded the first and biggest Japanese whiskey company, and his partner, they split up after some years, and he built the second biggest one. So this is where the distilleries reside, where the main whiskies are, which you can't see as India, where Ben just visited 2 distilleries, and the Sikkim distillery in the very north are the only 3 ones. India is the second whiskey-producing whiskey country in the world after Scotland, and this is due to, well, the Scottish soldiers in the Commonwealth of Nations, but they produce their whiskey from molasses, the residual of the sugar fabrication, and this is, well, a distilled whiskey, not very intense like the grain whiskey, which is then mixed together with malt whiskey to give a blended whiskey, which is then more in our taste, but it differs. There are different legislation in India as well. Now we're coming to the first whiskey. There's the comment on the chat, the best whiskey channel by far. Oh, thank you very much for this praise. I like it. And on top of that, there is a Japanese telling, I don't know, I had to look that up, how that translates later on. Yeah, our editor-in-chief, is this Japanese or Chinese? It's Chinese. So he is able to talk Japanese. So this is Chinese. Yeah, so the first whiskey we taste is the my personal malt. I decided to produce myself, not to produce, to mix it up myself and then have it produced in Scotland. This is a entry level, but with the very important facts a whiskey should have. Should be pure malt, just malt, no grain. But I would like to have an artisanal fabricated, my own thoughts about how whiskey should taste. So this is blended malt. Then no coloring, no artificial coloring. This is the color, how it comes from the cask, and then unchill filtered to have the full taste from the whiskey as it comes from the cask. There's a raw filtering that you do not have those charcoal bits in it, and no residue from the cask. No, there's a raw filtering but no chill filtration, and it costs 37.90 euros here in Central Europe. And we have a small set where all those 4 whiskies are in, where you can taste them. It was up for sale here for the people who follow the channel, that we now can together taste this whiskey. And if you do not have the time over Christmas to join this tasting here, you're able to order it afterwards. So it's for some month still available, probably for the whole year, so that you can then have your own set and then view this video to have your own tasting. So the whiskey is a little bit cold. The studio had been cold for 2.5 days. We have freezing temperatures for a week now. There had been just a little temperature in here, so now we heated it up to 20 degrees centigrade, but the whiskey is still a little bit cold, and you have to warm a whiskey a little bit up, so then you have the aromas rising easier from the liquid. It's the vapor pressure. That's, I think, it's the term for the physics what's happening here. So a little bit warm. If you're having a candle at home, you can warm it up at the candle, as you've seen in old films where they warm the cognac over a candle. Don't go too close to the candle, the glass will break. So stay a little bit away, just that it's be a little bit warmer, and then the aromas rise, and then you're able to smell. You need a glass with a cooper so that the aromas stay in the glass. And there are some clock lids from glass where you can cover the glass, and then you can open it and smell it. This is the way how to approach a whiskey first to have the full aroma. And then you're always able to add a drop of still water. Then the solutability of the liquid, of the alcohol in this mixture will reduce, and the aromas have to rise. And if you add just a teaspoonful of still water to a whiskey, then aromas rise a lot and you smell a lot more. Yeah. Here you're able to smell two different types of casks. There's the bourbon cask, which deliver a little bit of vanilla, and the sherry cask, which deliver a little bit of fruitiness, of darker fruitiness. And you have a light citrus note in it, and this is very, very typical to a to a younger whiskey. This is just 10 years of age, and then the aromas in a whiskey are still the fresh fruitiness, the fresh citrus notes from whiskey. And if it matures for longer, for 20 years, for 30 years, then this switches over to darker fruitiness. And if you use sherry cask, then you have darker fruitiness as well, coming from the wine which had been in the casks before maturing for the production of sherry. Cheers. Juicy, friendly, sherry, citrus notes are getting stronger. Little sweetness coming up. Middle long aftertaste still there, and rising oakiness, a little bit of spiciness from the oak. And this is what a whiskey is different to, say, a vodka made from grains, because the vodka is clear, colorless, and hadn't seen a cask at all. There are some special vodkas residing in cask, but the typical one not. And there you're lacking all these flavors from the cask, from the sherry which had been in the cask before, from the bourbon which had been in the cask before. So this is different. Yeah, very, very good. I created it myself. This is not the whiskey with the best flavor, with the most edges and features at all. This should be a whiskey which is very, very typical for a Scottish Speyside Highland whiskey, where a novice to the matter is able to taste and say, well, this is whiskey as it should be, then I like whiskey. So, now we're moving forward and have some pictures from the whiskey production. And this, it's not the picture lying on the side. No, those are big drums in which barley is produced, where you barley, the barley corn is in there, and then you add foggy, hot air, moisture, a lot of moisture in it, not too hot, just that the corn starts to germinate, and then the starch in the corn converts to maltoses. This is a malt sugar, and when the conversion process from starch to maltoses has finished, then you're able to ferment this freshly produced malt sugar to alcohol. So in these drums, the barley for the malt whiskey production is converted into malt. Then it's dried, and this is the old process we had in the former times. Very hard labor. If you have to turn that several times a day for a week or half a week, and you got a monkey shoulder, it was called. It was a bad hurting shoulder, and you have to turn it, otherwise you will get mold into the barley. Then there are windows at the side where you can change the air that is fresher, and you have to do that, and you have to be very perfect in turning the malt. This is Ben without its beard several years ago, and he does it not the best way, or he did it not the best way. You have to spread it by far. Yeah, so that's it. And then this malt is grinded with a mill, not too fine, coarse, and then added in this mash tun. And you see the yellow bottom of the mash tun. This is cast iron, and they are bolted together to give that ring. Those are the mash tuns from the old empire, from the Victorian age, where the cast iron appeared. And this lost a lot of energy up into the air, so they added this copper lid later. And in this, the grounded barley is added and mixed with water. And here you see this mixture going into or plattering into the mash tun. And then you see the gear in the middle with which you turn and mix the barley later on. The water which is added is quite hot, and you add several times different water. Then you have to rest for some time that enzymatic conversions are taking place, and then you take out the sugars from the barley into the liquid, into the water. Then you add a second one with a different temperature. Then you have different catalytic enzymatic conversions until no sugar is left over in this, and those goes typically to cattle feed. Very mineral rich. There's proteins in it. So you just take out the sugar and some very special ingredients. Next step is the fermentation, when this water now contains a lot of malt sugar. And here you see a washback. The liquid coming out of the mash tun is called wort, and after fermenting it's called washback. This is a huge vessel, made typically, the older ones made from Douglas fir, the newer ones from stainless steel. And there's a story below. So this contains 30, 40, 50, up to 70,000 liters, 20,000 gallons. So a lot of liquid which ferments. And here you see you add yeast, and that ferments, and those bubbles rising. And in the back you see a metal blade, and if the foam is getting too thick, then you start the metal blade rotating, that it cuts down the foam, that is not over cooking outside. I once had been at the Lagavulin distillery, then they had a power shortage, and then all the bubbles came out of the washbacks. It smelled very good, but it was a horrible work to clean that up. Yeah. And then this wash goes into the stills in the big copper pots where it's heated, and We all know or should know from school that the alcohol has a lower boiling point than the water, and then the alcohol evaporates and goes through the neck up to the line arm on the top, and the water stays back in the pot. And here you see the Glenfiddich pots, which are very small and are direct heated, which gives a very intense taste. And I think they have 24 or roughly 24 of those pot stills in the new still house. And there is, I think, the old still house still present where another 24 are standing. So they have a huge capacity to produce, and they produce the most malt whiskey worldwide. This is Glenfiddich. Yeah, from these pot stills, the vapors are cooled down and reach this spirit safe. And on the left-hand side, you see those spindles with temperature and density measurement. And on the right-hand side, you see a clear liquid flowing. This is the raw whiskey coming out from the stills. The first part, which is very sharp, very intense, is not wanted. You cut that off. Then the middle cut you take for the whiskey in the casks, and the rest, the after the least production, you let that stay behind. This has fusel oils in it, gives headaches, not at all. What distillery is it? I said Glenfiddich with the pot stills. The mash tun had been, I think, Old Vetterkern. And this one is, I don't know. Aberfeldy. It is Aberfeldy. Yeah. So we took them together to show the variety of the different production steps. This is now Glenfiddich from the air, and you see those huge warehouses where the whiskey filled into the casks resides for years. At Glenfiddich, at least 12 years of age. So the huge amount of whiskies produced in a year from all those stills, they have to rest in those warehouses, and for 12 years. So you need an awful lot of warehouses. You can't see all of them here. They have different ones where they mature whiskey as well. You can see some fog rising. You see the mountains in the back where typically some fresh water springs reside. Glenfiddich, you can't see, resides on the River Spey, where the cooling water is taken from. So this is a very, very typical Scotch distillery. Some white houses, most is granite walls, directly where you got the stones from. The quarries, it's called quarry, yeah. Yeah. Now you see from Glenmoray casks maturing, and here the front and the back end are changed to glass so that you can see the whiskey maturing in the cask. It comes colorless out of the spirit still, and here after years they suck the color out from the cask walls and catch the color, which is a little bit reddish if there had been sherry in it, because sherry might be produced from red wine. So there's some yellow tone in it. The others come from the staves, the cask itself, which is toasted, heated above 150 degrees centigrade, where the celluloses from the cask is split up to sugars again, as in the barley corn. And these sugars are now heated up over 150 degrees, so that caramel is the final product, and this caramel turns the whiskey brown. Yeah, and on the right-hand side the cask on the right-hand side is a little bit fallen down because whiskey evaporates out of the cask over the years. So if you have a 20, 30, 40-year-old cask, only a fourth of the whiskey will still reside in the cask. But all the taste, all the ingredients isn't evaporated. Typically water and alcohol is evaporating, and the faints, the very sharp foreshots, they evaporate so that the whiskey becomes better. Yeah, now we come to the second whiskey, which is the Highland Cattle. The Highland Cattle, 11 years old. We tasted that whiskey when it was 10 years old, and it took quite some months until we put it into the bottle, and then we decided, well, we put 11 years on it because it's 11 years old now. So we are very straightforward and have no fear to show odd numbers. Odd numbers are only good in old whiskies. Younger whiskies typically have even numbers. Yeah, here you see the Highland Cattle, the name-giving animal for this bottle. Very friendly. Relatives of mine have, no, friends of relatives of mine have a Highland Cattle farm in Lower Bavaria, and they're very friendly cattle. And they have, from time to time, a brownish, red-brownish color, which represents the color of the whiskey. So we named it Highland Cattle, and this one has a higher percentage of sherry cask matured whiskies, and this costs 39 euros and 90 cents here in Central Europe, in Germany. It's 46% as the others, no coloring, no chill filtration, a whiskey as it should be. It's a blended malt, again, because we created it in detail. Ben created it. So he said, if you have your own whiskey, I will have mine as well. And we said a sherry cask whiskey should be there as well. And there's a small bottle as well available. And this whiskey is a little bit too cold as the others are. So I have to warm it a little bit up. How this whiskey was made? Well, there are whiskies which reside or mature in old sherry casks. And the sherry casks come from the south of Spain, Andalusia, where they produce a fortified wine. And the normal wine is matured in oak cask. In former times, they produced them in European oak. Today, European oak had become very expensive. So now they're taking American white oak as well for the production of sherry. In Scotland, the regulations for the whiskey maturation were changed in 2019. So there are now different casks available where you can mature whiskey in. I don't like them very much. I like the American ex-bourbon casks and the sherry and especially port wine cask, very, very good. And some French barrique wine cask I like as well. But that's it. So I'm quite conservative in this direction. Now you can mature in ex-tequila cask, mezcal, calvados, cachaca, and some, well, fruit spirits are allowed as well. No, not good for my mother's son. Yeah. Have a nose. This one now smells differently to the other one. You have this distinct sherry note on the top. This is a dark fruitiness because sherries oxidize, are most often, not all, most sherries, especially those used for the whiskey maturation, are oxidized sherries which turn dark, and others keep the floor, the foam on top of them, and aren't oxidized, so they stay light fino. But the Oloroso, which is typically used, or Pedro Jimenez, they are oxidized and dark. And this leads to, well, older, or say, dried fruit tastes. This is typical taste of sherry casks. And to have it not too sherry influenced, we added first fill ex-bourbon casks. Means that after the maturation of bourbon, the whiskey immediately came into those casks, and that deliver more vanilla and more oaky notes to the whiskey. If a cask is used a lot of times, second fill, third fill, say in the blend industry, 3 years first fill, another 3 second fill, third, blah, blah, until 10 fills, then you have the last one 28, 29, 30 years after the whiskey cask came over, and then you have very, very bitter smells or tastes coming out of those casks. No, these are fresh ex-bourbon casks for the maturation. I'm sitting a little bit deep. That would be better. No, the footrest is too good. Yeah. This one has a big sherry note and especially spiciness, going over to a little bit of a peppery note. And this is a sign for, well, at least a few European oak casks which deliver a lot more of intense flavors than the American white oak, which is very smooth wood. Yeah, middle to long aftertaste, quite good. What I feel as well is some orange note. The first one has citrus note, which is very typical for a younger whiskey, and this one already probably through the sherry cask turned over to an orange note with a little sweetness in it. So this is a more intense, more smoother, a little bit sweeter, a sherry cask matured whiskey. Yeah, now we are moving on. We're over half an hour in the run, and next picture shows a map of Scotland where all those 4 whiskies come from, or the whiskies in these whiskies come from. And here you see the very south are the lowlands, then the highlands, and inside the highlands there's the region of the Speyside, and around lie islands. And this is the top of Great Britain, of the United Kingdom of the Isles, and show the northern part of the mainland, which is called Scotland. Now in detail, this is the region which produces most of the whiskies from Scotland. These are the highlands, and the part which produces most inside those highlands is the Speyside, which you see here. And roughly 50% of all the malt whiskey distilleries, probably 40% now, a lot of distilleries in the area around it came into production lately, is the Speyside, and this is the region where all the water, all the rivers supply the River Spey. It's not exactly, but roughly it's the water feeding system to the Spey, and all those distilleries residing in those regions is called the Speyside, with the Dufftown as the capital. Dufftown was built on 7 stills. Yeah, Rome was built on 7 hills. This is the old tale. This is the lowlands, the part which was industrialized first in the Empire, the British Empire, with the big cities Glasgow and Edinburgh. Edinburgh with the Crown Palace, and Glasgow with a big industry, the shipyards. In the 60s of the last century, half of the fleet steaming on the world oceans had been built on the Clyde, where Glasgow, in the shipyards of Glasgow. And the lowlands, I personally had said, would be a line from Glasgow to Edinburgh. In the south of it are the lowlands, where beautiful, smooth countryside, big fields with barley. But the lowlands, the line of the lowlands is a little bit in the north into the region of the highlands, where the area isn't that smooth and flat. And this has the reason in the legislation, then it was forbidden to produce whiskey in the Highlands, where the tax collector wasn't able to come to visit the distillery. And this region from Greenock to Dundee, I think, was the line passing Stirling, was the region where the tax collectors could reach the distilleries easily, and there the production of whiskey was allowed. So this is a tax line, and this isn't 100%, because in former times there had been some allowance to produce whiskey on the coast of the Highlands up north, because the tax collector came by ship, and you were able to collect your taxes up there as well. Yeah, then we have the Isle of Islay, and we had a comment in the chat that he is more on the smoky side. I'm more on the Islay peaty whiskey, Hagfish WS. And well, the fourth one, the unicorn whiskey, the Einhorn whiskey, this is contains whiskey from the Isle of Islay. There you had for several years just 8 distilleries. Now the 9th and the 10th had been added, and they produce mostly peated whiskey. Not all of them, but most of them produce peated whiskey. And there the very expensive whiskies come from as well. So this is the mecca of the whiskey connoisseur. And if somebody likes the whiskies, the smoky whiskies from the Isle of Islay, they once in a lifetime visit Islay to the Five Isle Whiskey Festival. Then there are the islands around. There it's rougher. There's more windy, more storm. On the northern coast there are the Orkney, the archipelago of the Orkney Islands, then the Outer Hebridean Islands on the west, then the Inner Hebridean Islands consisting of the Isle of Skye, Mull, and a lot of others. And Islay as well belongs to them. Then we have the peninsula of Kintyre, where the town of Campbelltown is, where the very famous distillery of Springbank is, and then the Isle of Arran in the inner part, on the eastern part of the peninsula. Yeah, so these are the regions in Scotland, and we're moving on with some hints how to taste whiskey. You should have, as I said, a glass with a cooper. If you have a smaller wine glass, this will fit also. I personally like a stem, a short one, not a long one, because if you have a whiskey tasting, lots of glasses on the table, then a glass is very easily turned over. And if you have quite a big foot and the small stem, then it will move. It won't fall over. And a sports wagon don't turn over, but an old high car will fall over. Then I have a lip on the top, because this lip lets the whiskey flow broadly on the tongue and not very with a small rinse to the back, where you typically smell the bitterness. And this is, I think, the ideal glass. You should have a crystal glass, not an amorphous glass, because then the whiskey shines better. It's something for the eye as well. Yeah, adding water, yes, a little bit, just to rise additional flavors. Not too much, otherwise you will water that whiskey down. Not too good. And I stay with the alcohol always, most often below 50. And the ideal I find between 43 and 46. And this I find the best. Adding whiskey to Coke. There's a whiskey, no, not in English. I tasted whiskey cola, and whiskey cola tastes best with the best whiskey. I had an Aberlour, 18 years of age, in original Coca-Cola. That was the best. So, yeah, but I will never mix whiskey and malt whiskey with cola again. No, not mine. Adding ice? No, because the pressure vapor is reduced, the aromas won't rise, it's just cold. And I would say put your ice into long drinks where whiskey is in it as well. There the ice belongs to, and keep the whiskey free from ice. That's it. Yeah, now we're coming to the Haggis. This is the newest bottle, the Unicorn, the Einhorn whiskey we produced half a year or a year before. And here we have the Haggis, and Haggis has two meanings. First is you have the stomach of a sheep, and you put all the inner, the liver and the kidneys and the fat and everything into this stomach of the sheep and cook it. And then you cut it open with a knife, add whiskey, and then you eat these aromatic smelling, very classic old mixture, lots of spices in it as well. There is some gourmet haggis out there as well, where you mix oat flakes so that you do not have this oil rinsing out of it. So a lot of people don't like that. But those were the years, the days, the old years, the old times, where you ate everything from an animal, because you need the calories, you need the minerals, you need the vitamins in the inner organs. So those are the haggis. And today you should join some haggis ceremony. You might find that in a local whiskey club. You might find it in Scotland when you're on vacations. You should have that. And very impressive. Then Robert Burns, the bard and the rhyme teller, how it's called, from Scotland, he has a ode to the haggis. It's recited and very, very, yeah, you remember that very much. And the second haggis is a fable animal. Some say it's there, but you aren't able to see it. And this haggis animal is dark in the woods, very rare to find. Yeah, and this should represent this animal here. Yeah, the haggis is 46%, 46.5% ABV, and as well unchill filtered, uncolored, and you see it's as brown as the Highland Cattle is with a sherry cask maturation, but this one is a different sherry cask, which is a lot more intense. It's 39.90 euros here in Central Europe, in Germany as well. We decided to keep the whiskey affordable. We would like to have very good ingredients, only malt whiskies in it, artisanal, mixed up or mixed together as we prefer it, but do not have a name of distilleries on it because you have to pay for that. We would like to have it affordable, and 40 euros, $45, whatever. They are affordable and is a reasonable price for a whiskey with these features, unchill filtered, uncolored, 46%. So if you typically have cheaper whiskies, the ABV falls down to 40%, which is the legal minimum. And then they add grain whiskey to keep the price low. So this is not what we intended to have. We would like to have premium whiskey. Yeah, have a smell. Little flowery, and there's a little bit of anise seed in the back. And this anise seed might come from different sources. One is the alcohol itself. This sometimes shows up with a light cooling effect, and this cooling effect is transferred by the brain into aniseed or eucalyptus if you have such a drop in your mouth, then the aniseed brings a cooler feeling into your mouth. So this is a little cooling and flowery note. In the back there's already some spiciness showing through. Yeah, cheers. Spiciness arises, a little peppery note is there as well. So this is much more intense than the Highland Cattle. Both are sherry cask whiskies, but this one is a lot more intense. They cost, I think, both the same. So this is as you like it. So whiskey is, there's no best whiskey at all. There is a journey tasting different whiskies. You might stick to several particular ones, like the smoky ones from Islay, or you like the sherry cask whiskies because they are fruity, little sweetness in it, or you like the original Speyside whiskey as the 10-year-old is. I'm fine with the haggis. He means the meal. Not really craving for it, but I have one when able. Yeah. The only whiskey I put a drop of water in is Lefroy cask strength. Enjoy the gem by its full flavor. I love Octomore, but not the price. Well, smoky whiskey, my fave. Woo, Islay. Scott's told me about that animal haggis all right back when it was new in the UK. Yeah. The aftertaste, medium to long. Now it's vanishing, and the oak is still present. In the nose now there is more sherry notes. It's darker, and there is more of the oakiness in the nose as well. The aniseed is gone. It's not too cooling. No. So here we are. Now we're coming to the part where I tell you how the smoke is coming into the whiskey. And here you see some peat. Peat is, well, the part in the moors, in the mosses you have in Scotland. Those are fibers, roots of the herbs growing there, and then they are put underwater, and now they are not oxidized, but now they are anaerobic processed, converting into peat. And there are different peats. On the top it's very light, like this one. This is burning lighter, more than normal fire. And if you have peat from the bottom, it's consistency like clay. You have to dry it very much, otherwise it won't burn. And when you burn it, you see this smoke rising up. But you have to have your fire not too hot. You have to put water on it, rinse it from a hose, so that is smoldering, and this smoke is rising up. And here you see such a pile of peat, and the peat smoke rising up. And by this smoke you dry the barley, which was just made to barley to malt on the floors. Then it's still wet, and here you dry it, and the barley resides on a floor with holes in it. And the water is now dried or taken out of the corn and comes through the chimney to the outside. This is particles, and the European community with all their regulations didn't see that very much, didn't like that very much, because it's fine dust particles in the air, but only maximum 10% of the distilleries in Scotland, and then maximum 10% of the malt is produced in this way. The others are produced in those drums we've seen in the beginning. Then they put steam or smoke into those drums as well to produce smoky barley, and this helps to preserve the peat as well. And these actions here are made for tourists, so when the tourists come they can see how the barley was made in former times. And the content of the whiskey is measured in parts per million phenols, and the phenols are specified by the distillery to the malt producer. As I said, very few distilleries still have maltings, because the big maltings are much more cost effective, and you conserve peat because you use everything up and do not spray it in the surroundings. So most 95%, 99% comes from those big malting companies. And there you say, I would like to have 40 ppm, as it is in this whiskey now. But the content of phenols in the final product is much less, because with the distillation process, a lot of phenols stay in the stillage, in the pot ale, residing after the distillation process, and a lot of them are converted during the maturation process. So this is the ppm during production, not in the whiskey itself. Yeah, this is, as I said, a blended malt whiskey. So this is not only peated whiskey, smoky whiskey, but as well other whiskies together, and the mixture has 40 ppm smoke. Yeah, the unicorn is the official animal of Scotland, of the state of Scotland. And well, in the former times when I visited Scotland, still unicorns around. No, just joking. It's a fabulous animal. And it's said that there is a whale with a tooth. And that was found on the beaches. And they say this comes from the unicorns. Well, I think that's the tale, but I might be wrong. So here we are. Scott here. Islay and Speyside are my faves, my favorites. Fellow Islay enjoyer. Now whale, probably that's the name of the whale. Yeah, I'm fine with the haggis. Yeah, very good. So, have a smell. So this unicorn Einhorn has 10 years of age, 46% ABV, as the others, blended malt whiskies as the others, but now 49.90 € at Whisky.com, because there is this Islay whiskey in it, and that's a lot more expensive, and we have to pay for that. Sorry for that, but it wasn't possible. Yeah, so this is not on the very stinky side. No, this is the bonfire side. And it depends on the peat you have from the top, which is burning hotter, and burning like wood. So there's not so much phenols in it, and the peat from the bottom, which has more of that. And then how hot you have your fire, how much the peat is oxidized, or the oxidation is stopped, and you have those compounds, those phenolic compounds in it. And this was a little bit hotter or drier, so that it's not that stinky. And the stinky part is the phenols as you have it probably as the disinfection in the hospitals. So sometimes there's this smell in it. I can't stay it all the time. Sometimes I like it very much, and sometimes no, I can't stand it. So this is more on the bonfire side. There's a little bit of phenols, so this hospital phenols in the back. Yeah. Then there's a light sweet note in it as well. Vanilla, caramel. No sherry cask, or yeah, probably there is some sherry cask in it, but not that much. You can see it, not too much. Comparable to the to my malt on the right hand side. Yeah, cheers. This is a smoky whiskey I like. I wasn't in the process producing that whiskey. That had been Ben's work. I was allowed to have the final have the final adjustments with him together. But the primer whiskey was selected by him. And this is a very complex, full, mouth-filling, little sweetness, peatiness, oakiness. The aftertaste not too long. It's not too spicy. No bitterness at all. And 10 years of age. Most of the modern Islay whiskies, which you are able to get, do not carry an age statement on it. So the demand for Islay whiskies is very, very high. So the distilleries more and more omit the age statement. They have good casks, of course, so they add with the good cask, but the longer maturation is more and more missing because the demand is that high. In the meantime, where Europe is suffering a economic crisis, the demand is reducing, and probably we will see whiskies with a higher age statement more on the shelves, as it was with Glenmorangie. They added 2 years to their whiskies. Very, very good. And didn't change the prices very much. So very good move. And I hope this will happen in the near future as well. Yeah, this is for today. Thank you very much for joining me. And the next live tasting is with Nicholas Kröger from the company Wagemut. And it is on the January the 6th, 2026 at 7:00 p.m. Central European Time. And in English, it's 1.5 hours later, 8:30 p.m. in English. So now I wish you a happy Christmas, rest Christmas, which is over, and a happy new year, and we're seeing ourselves again in the next year. And it was a very new experience for me to have a live tasting in English here alone. Typically Ben is carrying me. I hope it was sufficient for you having me here alone on this screen. Thank you very much for watching. Catch you next time.